Now lately there's been a lot of people that have contacted me and said, hey McGhie, what the heck is going on? We see all this stuff happening on Facebook, why are you stirring so many people up? So I thought it's best if I just sit here and try and explain. This is a call to action, okay? This is a call out there to all like-minded people to have a look at this issue right now. And the issue revolves around people in government, in businesses, and within the ranks of the people that should be our mates, our supporters. These people are being offensive. They're using a dirty four-letter word all the time. They use it over and over and over again for their own purposes, whether it be political or monetary standing, or in this case, to gain access into state forest land. This is the dirty four-letter word. Pest. To me, that is the worst four-letter word you can use. Why I say that is it strips away the empathy, the respect, and the consideration that many people have for animals. If something gets the pest badge slapped on it, then all of a sudden we hear the associated rhetoric, stuff like disgusting, filthy, feral pest coming out of the mouths of even children, okay? And people start to think that they can go and kill these things, kill an animal, and not have to worry about it because it's a filthy, feral pest. It's stripping the decency out of society. And it is the rhetoric that's been dripping from the left-hand side of government for decades now. And unfortunately, many of our own people and many of our alternative political parties have accepted the same crazy rhetoric. I've seen it in universities and I've seen it in government, where probably very decent-minded and decent people have grabbed the pest word because they realise that if they didn't use it in every sentence that they uttered, they weren't going to get funding. They weren't going to get the letters behind their names or the position that they wanted to get in their career. So pest has been the catch cry of the left. Now there's two different ways of looking at this issue. One way, if you've got too many, a surplus, overabundance of a pest, is to see them as worthless, and then you have a problem, you've got an issue. There's got to be money thrown at it to try and get those numbers down. Okay? On the other hand, if you look at something that you've got too many of, that you've got a surplus, that are overabundant, and you look at them as an asset, then you have a resource, and industry can be based around it. We've seen this many times overseas. New Zealand is a classic example. Okay, there's not many of people out there that I know that are hunters or have anything to do with the bush that supported the recent suggestion that they shoot and remove all the tar out of the mountains of New Zealand. Okay, there was a big push over there to do that through some government circles, but the hunters of right around the world got together, threw in money, got themselves organised and pushed the issue, saying no, we don't want them removed. And some of the best supporters were the actual helicopter pilots and shooters that could have done that job, could have got in there and shot 30, 40, 50,000 tar out of the mountains. Okay? These people were smart enough, wise enough to see that they killed the industry. And it was far wiser to keep the industry going, to regulate the herd, to regulate what they saw as a problem. Okay, the numbers needed a haircut. Yes, it needed bringing down. No problems. Everybody was happy with that. That's where it comes into the realm of sustainable management. Stop and listen for a little while. We're not talking about having deer running rampant through the suburbs of Brisbane. Those ones down there, in my mind, need to go. They need to be removed. They're a danger to the people down there. They're going to wreck things. We do not need them living in suburbia. There's new releases of deer that have happened over the last 20 or 30 years. Many of those will have to really show some good figures and some good management plans to justify why they should not be removed. But we're talking about a different issue here. We're talking about the traditional herds, the historic herds of Queensland. This philosophy on life was handed down from my dad, which was handed to him from his parents in New Zealand. Dad took that same ideal with him to the Northern Territory, where he met my mum and her father. They were shooting buffaloes for skins, and they couldn't stand the terrible waste of all these carcasses left out on the plains to rot. So they started the first export abattoirs for buffalo meat in Australia at Mount Bundy Station out of Deepwater. Growing up, I saw the wild red deer down here jump in value to where they were worth over $2,000 a piece, fresh caught. I was brought up to see them as a resource, to be used and not abused. Catch them, farm them, utilise them, respect them. But they were a resource. And yes, we pulled their numbers way down. We pulled the numbers down to a point where a lot of people were threatening us because they thought that we'd wipe them out. But we didn't. A lot of people, a lot of guys that were against us in those times have come to us since then and said, you know, it was the best thing that ever happened to the wild deer because it pulled their numbers down. It dropped them to a level where they weren't considered to be a problem. If we had industry based around the wild deer now, there'd be no talk of pest. They would be a valuable resource. So let me be clear now before the knockers start taking me out of context. What I'm talking about is an industry that's based on recreational hunting. One that is based on sustainable use principles, property-based wildlife management plans, but still able to employ more lethal control methods if necessary. Unfortunately, what's happened is this pest rhetoric has been allowed to infiltrate right through all ranks of government and right through society. And all our deer have been thrown in the one basket. We see newly released rooster deer and chital and fallow running in the suburbs being classed in the same way as our traditional historic herd of red deer up here in the Brisbane Valley. Sure, we have animals that are causing issues and problems. They have to be dealt with. We have to do it in a way that we utilise the word respect all the way through. Now, I've been asked by a group that I have had a lot to do with for the last 30 years, the Ridge Group, Research into Deer Genetics and Environment. I've been asked to put together a series of video clips to explain our situation, to explain the history of the wild deer here in Queensland and why our historic herd of wild red deer and fallow deer, our chital deer at Charters Towers and our Moluccan rooster up on the islands of Torres Strait should all be considered differently to the new releases of deer. We can see the difference. We can see that one can be managed and has been managed very, very well for the last 100 odd years by people that have been willing to work in cooperation with landowners. This is 2021, not 1921. Technology is racing ahead of us, and unless we are willing to embrace these animals as a resource, they will be removed. And sure, there's people out there that are saying, don't worry, Clark, they'll never get them all. And you're probably correct, but they might get 80% or 90%. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people making all the time now is that they're putting all the emphasis on the recreational hunter as the asset. Let's get recreational hunters into state forests to control and get rid of these filthy feral pests. You've accepted the pest rhetoric. Unless you change right now, there's no going back. So as soon as far more lethal and economical methods are developed, whether it be thermal drones, whether it be new types of poison or whether it be some gene editing technology. As soon as they are there and are more socially acceptable and economic than we are as recreational hunters, then we are gone. You've painted yourself into a corner, and the trouble is you've painted the rest of us in there with you as well. So again, my call goes out to the people that want to see recreational hunting survive forever, the ones that want to respect, manage and conserve our historic herds of wild deer in this country. If you're understanding what I'm talking about, get behind our small group called Ridge and help us find a sustainable solution to this problem.